to a show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats Podcast. It's me, it's Dante. How y'all doing? I think y'all are okay. So this week, my guest is a good friend and returning guest, Miss Teanna Taylor. We're just gonna have a conversation. We're gonna converse because I haven't really sat and talked with Teanna in a while. So I was like, let's sit down and talk. We haven't really recorded since episode 100. So, and that wasn't us. That was a group effort. She helped me though. So thank you with that. So, hey, Teanna, how you doing today?
I'm very well. Thank you, Jay. Thank you for inviting me back on.
I know. Absolutely. Thank you for, making the time to sit down and be on my podcast here. So I appreciate it. I greatly do. So we were just, well, before we start recording, we're just kind of goofing anyway. It's what we do. People don't get to see the behind the scenes.
No.
They don't get to hear like just the mess ups or as I'm trying to like say something clever and it's like, oh no, those aren't the right words. So one day it'll be out there. I'm pretty sure there's enough on the podcast that people are like, that dude said that wrong. I'm gonna try to find them and make a complete episode of them all. But Teanna and I were, just kind of talking. It was like, one thing, as much as we converse and as many times we record it, one thing that's never really come up is your transition to Madrid and how that all worked out and just getting the clubs started over there as well. So just want to kind of have a conversation about that and get a little bit of insight, if you don't mind sharing that.
No, not at all. So it was 2016 and my partner and I had been thinking for several years about leaving the UK. We both didn't want to live there anymore. We both wanted to live in the sun, live in a sunny country. And it was we were first considering New Zealand and Spain. And the visa process for New Zealand is very, very complicated. So when I went to a training session at the university I was working at in the north of England, I remember meeting a lady who I'd never seen before. So this was specific staff training for English for academic purposes, which is one of my specialisms. And I introduced myself to this lady I didn't recognize, and she said that she was from a university in Madrid. And I just happened to mention I would love to live and work in Spain. And she gave me her business card. I sent over my resume, and within literally 3 months, I was living in Madrid. It all happened very, very quickly. But with opportunities like that, they really don't come around very often. So grabbed it with both hands. And yeah, it was really scary. Moving countries is not an easy thing at all. It's very, very normal to focus on everything that could potentially go wrong. But I try to focus on everything that could potentially go right. And it was a very big life change. But because it happened so quickly, I wasn't able to deliberate too much. I just went for it. And honestly, I don't regret it at all. So I came over 6 months before Gareth and got everything set up. It was very, very important to me to live next to a gym because of how late the Spanish timetable runs. So I noticed that the classes here were a lot later. People eat a lot later. Everything just happens a lot later. So it was very important to me, given my working timetable, my teaching hours, etc., that I was based next to a gym because I know myself and I know if I'm tired, I'm more motivated to train if I don't have far to go. So that worked out really well because the fact I'm British made a lot of people very reticent to even let me rent their place because they just outright said, sorry, not prepared to let to you because you're British and you all drink too much. And I was like, excuse me. Aside from the fact I'm kind of teetotal, the irony wasn't lost on me there. But it was the whole stereotype of the football hooliganism. Brits going to Ibiza or Spain and getting really drunk. That really sticks with people. But not everybody is like that, and I most certainly aren't. But anyway, ended up getting a flat really close to the gym, so that was hugely positive. And then the club I was originally training under first when I moved into Madrid, when I first moved to Madrid, shut down because the instructor moved back to Brazil. So Gareth was asked to teach at a different premises, and that's how we first started. Yeah, so initially I was the only one on the mat with him, so it was literally starting from scratch. And we affiliated with Stealth Manchester, which is where Gareth has trained for about 11 or 12 years and got his black belt under Professor Stephen Campbell. So we affiliated and took it from there, really. Okay. And with time, one of his students, who was on the Cuban national team for judo, said that he would like Gareth to teach at his gym. So we started Stealth Madrid Luce. So we have 2 affiliate clubs, and that's how it all started, really.
So when you all moved, you said it was basically like within 3 months. It was just kind of a quick turnaround. With doing that, how different was it for you? Like, where it was just kind of like fly, go, 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 or was it more like, in those 3 months kind of leading up to it, was there any hesitancy, or, was it just kind of, looking ahead and just, let's see what happens?
There was some hesitancy. I think it would be deeply inaccurate to say otherwise. But the thing is, the UK pays very well. Well, it did when I when I lived there. Things have obviously changed since Brexit and other things going on. But I wanted more from life, so I was very much prepared to give up, particularly the financial benefits from working in the UK, to explore new avenues. That was very important to me. So of course there was some hesitation because Gareth didn't know Spanish. We would be living on one salary, which would be mine. And obviously you do question, is this going to work out? Is it not? But it was very much about quieting those doubtful and unhelpful negative voices and focusing on what could go right instead of focusing on what could go wrong. And a lot of the comments from my colleagues in the UK were along the lines of, oh, you're very brave, it's very courageous to, give up everything and move abroad. But it's like, well, I do think the pain of regret is a lot worse than the pain of something not working out. And I always told myself, look, I've got my qualifications, I've got my experience. Worst case scenario is that we end up moving back to the UK. And okay, the idea was to not be there, but at the end of the day, it's not so bad that you can't live. So it was definitely worth the risk. I say take the risk or lose the chance.
Sure. I think that's something that I know even for myself and a lot of people, we look at it as like, as you're about to take this leap, you get into this kind of scary territory where you're like, well, what if it doesn't work? What if this doesn't, go the way I plan? And like you said, well, okay, then just reset. It's not like, you jump over and it doesn't work and then you just kind of, okay, I guess I'm going to sit here in the street now.
To be honest with you, it didn't turn out the way I planned, but I think if I had stayed in the UK in my comfort zone, I would have deeply regretted it. I'd be quite wealthy, but I would have deeply regretted it. So,
sure.
As somebody who is quite focused on self-growth, self-improvement, and experiencing new things, I definitely don't regret it.
Well, good. It's, people put a lot of emphasis on, like you said, if you were to say in the UK, you'd like have a lot more money, be a lot more wealthy. But it's like, would you be happy though? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so so good. I'm glad the transition worked out for you, and like you said, you don't regret it. So that's the key point, is you don't regret it. Because if you're here, many years later, and you're like, I'm still here. Like, I hate it. It's like, well, why, like, why are you still there then? I regret every moment of it. Oh, that sucks. Like, can't you go back? Maybe.
Yeah, do you know what? I do find that people sometimes have a hard time being honest with themselves, because like they've made a big change and they've invested so much into this change that for some people it's hard to admit that, okay, this hasn't worked out, and they're kind of intent on sticking it out. But if you're ultimately not happy, then that's, for me personally, that's not a road I would go down. I would just make some changes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, it's it's like the ideal of just being stubborn. It's like, I've got friends that, they've made a decision and they know they're wrong, and it is bombing. It's like you're just looking at them. It's like, hey man, can I help you to like something, please? And they're like, no, 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 no. They justify why they have to stick it out. And it's like, you don't have to justify being miserable if
Exactly.
if it ain't working out for you. So that happens too often with too many things, whether it be collecting action figures or you know specific sports, more so as kids. So, well,
Yeah.
good. And when you all got the club started, you said it was just you and your partner in the beginning, just you two on the mats. You know, did you do any kind of like, how'd you know I guess draw people in? Like, what really got people kind of rolling, and when did you feel like, once that started happening, what was that point where you felt like, okay, now the ball is rolling, now we're comfortable?
So basically, the difference that we bring to the table is that all of our classes are taught in English, and you might have some other clubs in Spain or in Madrid where they have actual students who speak the language, but I say we, it's actually Gareth teaches everything solely in English. I translate if necessary. So at the beginning, I had to translate everything. Well, actually, in the beginning, it was literally just me. But as we started building up through advertising, a part of it was through word of mouth, but an issue that we had is that people didn't know anything about us, really. We were just two random British people in Madrid. So there wasn't that level of confidence, or I would say as well trust, because people didn't really know us on a personal level. So the way things work in Spain is quite like many other countries, is that particularly here, a very big cultural difference between, I would say, here in the UK, is that people are obviously off in both places recommend things and clubs or whatever it is by word of mouth. But here that has a lot more weight, I would say, than the UK, generally speaking. And it's the same in the job sector and lots of other areas as well. So we did advertising, we started a website, and because of Gareth's lack of Spanish, it was me responding to all the calls, emails, messages, etc. Having an Instagram and Facebook page obviously helped, and doing advertising and marketing on that helped us build up the clubs. And I would say it was in 2020, myself in particular, I was able to look back and say, yeah, we've done well here. This is the club. Both clubs are really growing. But then obviously then COVID hit and everything had to close. And I was thinking, goodness, are we going to start from scratch? Because, we then invested in some jigsaw mats, and we're giving privates at home. But I know we weren't the only ones. But we obviously could not do any jiu-jitsu in either of the clubs, and the police were very, very strict about it. I know of some places in the UK where people were found training during COVID and they got a warning, whereas in Spain it was very much here's an on the spot €20,000 fine. So that was not worth the risk at all. That was just way too much. So we were doing private classes from home. And then actually, thankfully, after COVID, it did take a little bit of time to get back to our previous numbers, because we had people who had left Spain due to COVID and having family in other countries, and people's work situations had changed. Some people had lost their job, some people had changed their occupation. But then on the other hand, we had quite a lot of new people really wanting to get into it, because during lockdown they had the chance to research it more and find out a little bit more about what it involves. So we had a lot of fresh faces as well. But yeah, it did take a little while. Our second club in particular that I mentioned, where the owner was part of the Cuban judo squad, that in particular has grown quite substantially, but both are doing really well. And the level of English of everybody actually has improved to the extent where I don't need to translate as much, and that's quite good because I can focus more on the technique. Because when you are listening really carefully to make sure the non-native English speakers understand the intricacies and the details of the technique, you can get so focused on use of language that you're then focusing more on that than actually watching the technique and making sure everyone understands, to find that actually ultimately you don't understand. But I have to do that less and less now, but I genuinely don't mind doing it.
I'm glad that, despite COVID, hitting you all like everyone else, I'm glad that, everything's going well with it. As soon as you said, around 2020, you felt pretty good about it. It's like, as soon as you said 2020, I was like, oh no, I don't know if you know this, but in 2020, COVID hit.
Yeah.
But
that was it was so disappointing. I mean, it was really, obviously, more than anything, the deaths and how people were being affected was massive, particularly in Spain, because it's very common here the standard greeting is to kiss people on the cheek. And with the nature of COVID and how it spread, kissing people is much more risky in terms of infection than, for example, the British or the American standard handshake. And another cultural difference here is that people live at home with their parents to a much higher age than, for example, the UK or the US or Australia. And it's very common to have grandparents living with you as well. So in that sense, somebody who's young and healthy, who would not necessarily get ill, may have passed the virus on to older family members and elderly family members. So yeah, Spain was hit quite severely in that sense. So obviously that was the most distressing thing, seeing so many people die. And I know I have particular teammates who lost family members of different ages. So it was all a bit uncertain, as in most places, what it was going to be like with the reopening of gyms. But thankfully, we survived. And I'm very grateful to our members for that, for being loyal, and to the new people who came in as well.
Good. That was one of the things over here in the US. Early on, they got to a point where they're like, we may never shake hands again. I was like, relax. I think we'll be okay at some points. And that's not to downplay COVID. It was a scary thing because you saw a lot of people getting sick. A good friend of mine, her mother passed away, recently from it. It was one of those things where we all felt like, okay, COVID's going away. I think we haven't really heard much about COVID. I ended up getting COVID. Actually, everyone in this house got COVID. Sorry, I brought it back to them. And me, I always try to make light of situations, on my own behalf, to try to keep a smile on my own face and make my family laugh. And I'm making jokes about me having COVID because I I did feel fine. I was a little weak, and then it turned out that you know there was a post on Facebook a couple days prior. I didn't even read it, but my wife told me, and she said a good friend of ours, her mom had passed away, and it was just, I don't know. I think that was reality. It hit. It was like, oh shit, we can, like, this does kill people. So, and she wasn't unhealthy. She was relatively healthy, and she was triple vax and everything. So it was just a very COVID's a very scary thing. So, but I'm glad you all made it through it, bounced back, and all was well. With the club. So
Thank
good.
you.
Good. Um, when you were making the decision to move from England to either New Zealand or Spain, yeah, I know. I guess being where you were, you're kind of like complacent, not happy. You wanted to change. Uh, what was it about New Zealand that made that an option?
So the appeal with New Zealand had a lot of it to do with the scenery. Actually, it's a very, very beautiful country. The education system, the higher education system there is very good. So there were job opportunities for what I specialise in at university level. And it just seemed like a much more relaxed culture and way of life. I really like the idea of being outdoors in all that beautiful nature that I have to admit, I'd seen it secondhand through my sister, who speaks very highly of the place, and also in photos and documentaries and things. But in addition to it, how scenic, etc., it is, being close to Australia and also the academic environment there, what I knew, was quite appealing actually. But ultimately, to get there is an extremely long journey, and I had the concern of if there was any family emergency, getting back to the UK could be somewhat problematic. At the time, my sister was living in Japan. She's now living in Korea. And when my grandmother passed away, she was unable to get back because it happened so suddenly. So that was another consideration as well. But now, if I need to go back to the UK, I'm only 1 hour and 50 minutes from London, so it is quite convenient.
So whenever well, at least in some circles, when we think about New Zealand, we always think about all the wildlife and things that can kill us. So we're always like, wow, you want to go to New Zealand, Australia, in that area and all that? Okay, have fun with that. You don't know what might, just what kind of wild spider might get me in the middle of the night. So I don't know. But and then also, like you said, I think the big thing is like the distance away from everything is just always forget how big this world is and how far everything is away from each other. Even when speaking with you before, talk about Barcelona, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
how far away is that? And I'm thinking like, it's probably 30 minutes away. Like, oh, wait a minute, that's far. That's really far. But I guess the same could be said about the U.S. here, where it would seem like, oh, Texas can't be too far from Maryland. Ah, yeah, it is. It's pretty far. So,
Yeah, I've heard
uh,
I've heard people mention like you can. I mean, someone I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong on this, which is quite likely that I'm incorrect. But I've heard people say that you can be in one state and drive for a whole day and still be in that state. So
yeah,
that, yeah, the US is huge. It's very, very big.
yeah. I mean, it's the U.S. has. We were talking about it last night, Sarah and I, my wife and I. You all know Sarah. Everybody listen knows Sarah. She's been on a few episodes. We were talking about how the U.S. has such, diverse, landscape. Like Maryland, especially. Maryland's really weird like that, where we can drive for about an hour or so and end up at the beach, but then go 15 minutes in the other direction. We're in the mountains. So, and also our climate, our weather is weird here too, because
It
you know,
changes a lot, doesn't it? It does
yeah,
change a lot.
it like I think there was one week it was like 70 degrees, and then the next week it snowed, and it was like, well, we're approaching spring at this point. It was like, geez, Louise, but it's just the way of the world, I guess. So, and again, with you, choosing between those two places, like, were there any other like destinations kind of in mind, or just Spain and New Zealand were like the top two? There's no number three. This is you know these two things be so far away, as far as so different that you had to go there.
So another big consideration was the US, specifically California. And I know there are a lot of Spanish speakers in California, but my idea was to become completely fluent in Castellano, which is Spanish spoken in mainland Spain, and then ultimately end up in the US. However, with a lot of different things going on over there, a lot of tensions, etc., and the fact it is also quite difficult to get a visa, a sponsor visa, because it's proving that you are needed rather than hiring somebody from the US. And I saw the same issue during my master's degree with a couple of girls on my course who were studying the same degree program, and they wanted to stay in the UK. But again, being sponsored for a visa is quite difficult unless you do something very, very specific. Now, back then, I wasn't at the same level with academia as I then got to, so it would have been harder. So yeah, the US was another consideration as well, specifically California. Having trained there, having actually been there, I am a big fan. Not of the prices though; it's very expensive. It's very expensive.
Every time I think about California, I've never been there. I don't know. I think the furthest west I've been is Colorado, which that's beautiful too. It's like I considered at one point just packing up going to Colorado, but then I was like, nah, let's not. I was not at all like Teanna and said, let's go. I was like, yeah, let's go. And then I said, just kidding. Let's hang out here. And, at that point, I met my wife, though, and the rest is history. But,
Everything works out, doesn't it? Everything pans out in the right space and time that it's meant to.
well, yeah, that was the path. So, I mean, I can imagine what it would have been like had I gone to Colorado, and, you know, just what that world would have been like for me, how different I would be. Like, would I have, you know, drifted towards jujitsu at all? Probably not.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I've never been to California, but I know so many people there, and I'm like, dude, I have to go. And it looks beautiful there. It's just like you said, it's just
Yeah.
such a different world. It seems like. So, and hopefully, anyone that's listening that is in California, you know, can confirm that. Don't rain on our parade. We're like, yeah, well, this happens and that happens and this happens. It's like, yeah, but we don't know that. Let us let us believe what we want to believe, because there are those people. Like, oh yeah, well, it's not so great. Like, it's expensive. Yeah, we know that. We covered that. Yeah, well, it's sunny all the time. Yeah, kind of like that. Like, it's not a bad thing. So, like right now, today here in Maryland, it has been sunny, cloudy. It's going to storm soon. And then it went back to sunny. So I don't know. You never know
Much
what
more
you're
like,
getting here.
yeah, it sounds a bit more like British weather. That's why, generally speaking, us Brits tend to take an umbrella. England, where we, whenever we go out, because it could be sunny one minute and then we have a massive downpour. So be prepared is the message, really.
Ah, Boy Scouts. That's the Boy Scout motto. Be prepared. Like, well, even yesterday when we were moving to elliptical, it was sunny, But while I'm driving, there are all these clouds. I was like, oh my God, dude, it's going to pour. And the elliptical was going to be in the back of a pickup truck. So there's no cover. And I was
Yeah.
worried. And and it didn't rain at all though, but it looked like it was going to. And I think um, even at work, we got some painters doing work, and on Friday they didn't do anything because it was supposed to rain, and it was fine most of the day. Then it rained for like 20 minutes, and then it was fine again. So it's we just never know, and that's fine.
So one of the interesting things about my first trip back to the UK after living in Spain was how how much it hit me how low the clouds are. And that sounds a bit strange, but it almost felt like it was so grey, it was suffocating. Because in Spain, it obviously does get cloudy, but it was winter, but the skies will still be blue. And it's cool, yes, but it's not, it does get very cold in, for example, January, February, but at this point it was around December, and I was just used to it being a little chilly, but very blue skies with some clouds. So I 3 months later, I go back to see my family, and yeah, the first thing that hit me was this feeling of like suffocation, that the clouds were really low. But yeah, I did feel like, yeah, the weather really does impact your mood, and that had a lot to do as well with wanting to move, because it was just depressing going to work in the morning and you leave the house and it's dark. You might come home at maybe even as early as 4:30, and it's still dark. So it yeah, I do get affected by the weather, rightly or
Sure.
wrongly, but I'm much happier living in Spain, much happier all around.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, the weather. We've had this conversation. I know for me, there'll be some days I'm, fully energetic and just, you know, everything's going right, but it's sunny.
Yeah.
And then those days where I get up and it's cloudy, and I'm just like, I'll shoot you a message. You're like, you okay? He's like, yeah, yeah, man. Just it's raining. I'm like, oh, okay. I get it now. Which typically I used to typically enjoy the rain. I loved when it would rain. I think just as I've gotten older, I'm like, man, the rain is trash. I hate this stuff. Like every time I'm out in the rain, I go in the house, all my clothes are wet, and then I'm cold. But as a kid, that didn't matter. It was just like, hey, rain, let's go splash. I think about it. Sophie, she loves going out in the rain. She loves splashing in the puddles.
In the puddles, yeah, I can imagine.
All makes sense now. Like kids love rain, adults don't. I get it now.
But over in Spain, we if we have like a shower, um, it will be a very intense but very short-lived one. It's just such a shame that because I do so much jiu-jitsu and therefore have so much washing out on my
Mm.
balcony, that in that very short but intense shower, my gis get absolutely soaked, even if it just lasts 10 minutes. It's a very intense downpour, but then it will clear and be sunny again. It just takes the humidity out of the air.
Oh, see, yeah, over here, we had a get together last week, and it was hot. I think it was like 91 Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what that is Celsius, but it was hot. It wasn't pleasant. And then we were like, well, if it rains for just a minute, though, it's going to get worse because the humidity, the air is going to get thick, and then we're going to be even more uncomfortable. It didn't at all. This was around midday. Once it got, I think, around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, it cooled off, and all was right in the world. And it
Yeah.
could have rained all it wanted then at that point, but no, we're good.
It's such a British thing to talk about the weather, and because we talk a lot, and I always say, "Oh, it's sunny," or "It's this," or "It's that." That is very, very British.
It's funny because over here, well, I don't know if it's so much that anymore. Maybe this was an older thing. It's like talking about the weather was kind of a um, small talk, like
Yes,
you're
yeah.
just nervous or trying to break that tension. But I talk about the weather because I don't know. I always find the weather actually interesting. So whenever you mention it, I'm like, yeah, that. I, I guess because I always want to know what's going on in the rest of the world, though. So if I'm
Yeah.
talking to someone, like, but I have friends in Sweden, and just in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's always snowing in Sweden. There's always snow. Not correct at all. That's wrong. But in my brain, it's always snowing over there. So when I speak to my friend Johan, I do want to know, like, hey, dude, so what's the weather like over there? Like, is it like pleasant? Is it chilly? You guys got snow yet, dude? It's July. Yeah, just wait. Just I don't know. I have questions. I just need answers. So yeah, whenever you mention the weather, it doesn't seem odd to me at all. It's almost like it kind of rolls into where my brain is anyway. Like, oh yeah, the weather. That is something I do think about with other countries. I guess specifically like Madrid and when it gets hot over there, like AC, like like I don't know if it was you or someone else that mentioned in Europe, like a lot of places didn't have like central air conditioning.
Yeah, that's very common.
That's just a general thing, across the board, like, or is that like why is that? Like, are they like, man, like central air is dumb, like like we're tough. And I'm like, mm-mm. I'm a punk. Give me that AC.
I have actually heard a lot of Americans comment on the lack of AC here. And in the UK, it's not something we necessarily have in all our houses or apartments. And it's very common not to have it here in Spain. But the thing is, here, the weather is so much hotter. And in the summer, it can reach 45 degrees Celsius, which is 113 Fahrenheit. And you absolutely need AC. You absolutely do. We have it in our main living room, and I really struggle to sleep, even with extra fans and ventilation during the height of summer. And actually, during lockdown, because we matted our bedroom, we put the bed in the living room under the AC unit and slept with the balcony open until it was time to put on the air conditioning. And that worked really effectively. But the only problem is the garbage here gets collected every morning at like 3 a.m. So it's very, very efficient in that sense in terms of recycling and garbage collection. But then the noise from that will keep you awake. So when that happened, we closed the balcony doors and then put on the AC. But it can get very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable.
Yeah, that just up to 113 Fahrenheit. That's crazy. Just the, I mean, it gets over here. We have our moments too, but that's I can't even imagine. And then not having the central air flowing during COVID. Well, as soon as COVID kind of started up, we were going into, I think, May and June. Our AC wasn't working, and
Oh my goodness.
I was in denial. Like, I was like, because we didn't really need it in May, and Sarah mentioned, I don't think the AC's working. I was like, no, we're good. Like, it's fine. Like, no, you're imagining. And then when it got into June, I was like, okay. I think we went into the first or second week of July without AC, and our neighbors had a window unit that they let us borrow. And it's weird because we I'd never spoken to those neighbors. I guess Sarah had encountered them a few times, but they let us borrow their AC units, and it helped a little bit. I don't like to sleep with my doors open. I have to have all doors closed, um, bedroom door, closet doors. I can't sleep with doors open at all. And during that period, we had the AC unit set close to Sophie's room, and her door is open. So for us to get any effect from it, we had to sleep with our door open, and that was such a stressful time for me. I wasn't worried about the stuffiness and no AC. I was worried about the door being open because you know
Yeah, if you're not used to it, then it feels quite strange, doesn't it?
I just feel like somebody's watching me. Someone's standing at the door, just looking over me, and it's like, I don't know. It's weird to me. People need
Yeah.
to sleep with your doors closed. Stop being weirdos. Uh, but yeah, that I've always wondered that, and it was like, is that like kind of a standard thing, or is it just maybe this individual didn't have central air, or if that's kind of a common thing. So interesting
Yeah,
to know.
it is very common to have apartments over here that don't have any AC at all. That's very common, but it's for me as a Brit, although I'm used to weather that's not particularly good. Um, I don't know. It means I don't notice the cold as much as the Spanish typically do, but the heat I definitely notice because I'm more used to having one day of sun over the summer. So yeah, I definitely need AC. Definitely.
As do I. Uh, and Sophie will say as well, because I'm when it comes to jujitsu, I'm the sweaty guy in the gym. Like
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I put on my gi and I start pouring. They're like, dude, we haven't even started. It's like, don't judge me. And I could be doing just a small task here at home, whether it be, I don't know, moving an elliptical machine down the stairs. I start pouring with sweat, and my daughter will come over and like kiss my forehead. So, ew, you're sweaty.
Oh, bless her.
I was like, you know, stop judging me. So,
I always actually have to keep a mat, sorry, not a mat, a towel by the mat because I'm the same. I always shower before training, and I see it as my body being extremely efficient in cooling me down, and that's why I sweat so much. But yeah, I have to have a towel for jiu-jitsu because I'm the sweaty girl in the gym. So in the summer, when it reaches 45 or 43, we generally do more no gi because again it's really hot. But we still do some gi. But like you said, before we even start, I'm already sweating. I pre-warn my training partners. They know, they're cool with it. But yeah, it is particularly tough training in the summer. But in a sense, it's kind of good because if you can withstand that heat,
mhm.
you kind of get used to, for example, when the gi covers your face and you're sometimes struggling to breathe, that becomes much more normal. It's still, don't get me wrong, it's still uncomfortable, but you become more used to it because of the weather and the environment in which we're training.
I understand that completely. Um, I used to, even like in the summertime. So at my gym, we used to do like no gi July
Mhm.
just because it's so hot. Then they, kind of went away from that. But when we would have, just regular gi class in the summer, sometimes I'd wear a sweatshirt or a hoodie underneath, just almost kind of like a self torture. But uh, because there was this thing in my mind where it's like, yeah, if you could withstand it during like just being uncomfortable, you can do it no gi, regular gi, whatever. Sometimes I do things that don't make sense, but it makes sense to me.
I can't actually even wear spats under my gi because I just get too hot.
So I it's weird because it's a foreign thought to not have on spats underneath for me.
I wear shorts, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I can't wear full length spats. No
I
way.
like if I'm just wearing shorts, I feel extremely uncomfortable. If I'm wearing spats, it just feels like regular life. I feel like everything's good. Sometimes I just wear spats though, like under my sweatpants. I don't know. I just do goofy things sometimes.
That
It's just
that's more common than you realize. Actually, I don't do it, but I know people who do.
like I don't do it like I so sometimes I would have to go to class right after work. And early on I used to wear spats under my work clothes, but I also drink a lot of water throughout the day. So I have to go to the bathroom a lot. So it became, it seems like, okay, I can't go through this task of taking off multiple layers just to go to the bathroom. So now, and then it got to a point where what I would do is I would take my lunch break later in the day and then change clothes on my break. So that way it's like maybe only an hour and a half before I have to leave for class. But either way, they're just sometimes randomly I will wear spats because and rash guard. I'll wear a rash guard around the house just like his regular shirt. My daughter like pokes my belly. Um, so with jiu-jitsu and everything, how's that going for you right now?
It's going quite good. I had 7 weeks off due to some more surgeries that I needed, but these thankfully had nothing. I say thankfully, they had nothing to do with jiu-jitsu, but unfortunately, the problem came out of nowhere, and it meant I couldn't compete in 4 competitions I had planned. So, just over a couple of months ago, I remember feeling quite sick in class and needing to stop rolling because of pain in my stomach that was radiating through to my back, and I didn't think too much of it. But then it happened more and became more intense. So I went to see my GP. She examined my back and said that I had a lot of like muscle spasms and a lot of knots, but she didn't actually examine my stomach. And a week later, I ended up back there. And upon examination, she thought I had an issue with my gallbladder because it had previously come up that this might be a problem. And when she looked on the system and saw that I didn't have my gallbladder removed, she wanted me to go for further tests. So they were arranged for the following Tuesday, but it was 2 days later. It was on the Saturday morning. After having seen her, I was in a significant amount of pain and I knew it wasn't normal. So I took myself to the emergency room and I knew something was wrong. I knew I shouldn't be in that much pain. But at the same time, I was so physically tired that I just wanted to sleep. And I go to the emergency room, I get examined. I have the doctors are concerned about my reaction upon my stomach being touched. So they sent me for an emergency CT scan, and it showed I had appendicitis and a ruptured cyst on my right ovary. So in a weird way, it was a relief to know that they could identify what it was, because as I don't know if listeners know, but I know you know, I had a quite severe issue with my liver that didn't get a name for well over a year. And it was so distressing having all these tests and getting no answers. So the fact that they were able to identify it on that day, and I had surgery within 2 hours. They took out my appendix. They cleared up the fluid from the ruptured ovarian cyst. And although I was in a lot of pain, I felt confident everything would be okay. First and foremost, though, I was absolutely gutted. I was really disappointed I wasn't going to be able to compete, because my last competition was the Europeans, and that was my big comeback competition after 2 ACL and meniscus surgeries. So that was incredibly disappointing. But on the other hand, I was hopeful because I knew the recovery time wouldn't be anywhere near comparative with that of ACL surgery. And then I was still in hospital and I got discharged. I think it was about 4 days later, a very similar pain started to return. So I mentioned it when I had a checkup with my surgeon, and he sent me straight for an emergency ultrasound and blood tests. And he told me to come back up and see him once I got the results. So had the blood test done. They said they couldn't give me the results that day because obviously I was in outpatient treatment. I wasn't in the emergency room. But I did have my scan, and the ultrasound showed I had quite a lot of fluid built up in my pelvis. So went back to share these results to the surgeon. He was actually in theatre doing a major operation. So I'm sat there waiting in the waiting room. And as is very common in Spain, due to the culture, people have a siesta during the day, and things will often close between 2 and 5 p.m. So I'm sitting in this waiting room, and it gets to the point where I need to lay down. So the very kind receptionist let me do so. But when it got to 2 o'clock, she was like, well, the department's going to be closing. Because don't forget, this is not the emergency room, it is outpatient. So I'm waiting to see my surgeon. And I ended up being so unwell that she physically helped carry me down to the emergency room, and my bloods were repeated, and I needed emergency surgery again to remove this buildup of fluid in my pelvis. And that's when that was the first time I would say I actually felt a bit scared, because I didn't have a concrete reason for this happening, and the doctors couldn't really give me one. So as a competitor, I'm thinking, is this going to be a periodic repetitive problem that they can't identify the cause of? So I was rushed back into theatre, and this time though the risk of infection was considerably higher, because I hadn't yet healed from my first abdominal surgery, because that was like less than a week before. So I remember coming round from the general anaesthesia, and I can't breathe, and this is nothing I've experienced before, and this is my 17th time on the operating table, and I'm trying to wave my hands to say I can't breathe, something's wrong, I can't breathe, and I can't physically talk. So I'm literally flapping like a seal to try and get their attention, and that's when they took the tube out of my throat, and I was gasping for air. It was that was scary, because I had the procedure explained to me. It was all meant to be very straightforward, and it was straightforward, but the tube wasn't mentioned. And because I had surgery less than a week before, and I wasn't intubated, I could breathe fine. That was a really unexpected and quite scary, because I'm awake, I'm trying to talk, and I physically can't get the words out, and that generated a lot of panic. I hope anyone listening to this who's due to have surgery doesn't suddenly develop health anxiety, but that's definitely not what I would want for anybody. But it was unpleasant, because I didn't expect it, and I'm trying to talk, and I can't physically get the words out, and I'm trying to say I can't breathe. So that was a little bit uncomfortable, very uncomfortable actually. And then after that, I had a minor procedure done to examine my intestines. Thankfully, that came back clear, and I did have to take time off training to get fully healed, but now I'm back on the mats. I'm rolling okay. My cardio still needs work, because I think in jiu-jitsu it's a different type of fitness. I've seen my teammates have just a week off for example, holiday, nothing to do with medical reasons, and they just gas out when they come back. So having 7 weeks off meant that I knew it would be a little bit difficult at first, but it's getting easier, and I'm going back to my strength training, because I've had quite a lot of time off from that as well. So yeah, jiu-jitsu and weights are my focuses at the moment.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember you telling me about the tube, and just as you're explaining it now, I forgot, and I was like, it's like I'm on the edge of my seat, like, wait, what was wrong? Wait, what was going on? And then once you describe, like, oh yeah, no, I do remember that. Yeah, that can be, if you're not prepared for that.
Yeah,
it's like, well, what the hell's going on here? Like, I can't even imagine what was going, through your mind, because you're coming to, and then like, oh shit, did they take out my voice box?
it was scary, I'm not gonna lie, but then panicking obviously made it worse. I was like, I can't breathe, and I'm trying to communicate the fact I can't breathe, so all I can do is like wave my hands, and yeah, that was deeply unpleasant, not nice at all.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm glad though you're back on the mats, and like I always say, everybody loves a good comeback story. So
yeah,
marching back.
I understand. I've had I've had a couple of comments. Are you trying to get as much surgery as you can or something? Because it just obviously I've had a lot of surgery now, and it's been for a lot of very different reasons. But only two of my surgeries have been related to jiu-jitsu. So it's other issues with my organs not function as they should that have needed, which is why I've needed so much surgery. But I really, really hope that that's it now. I can draw a line under it and I don't need any more. But, you know, the unpredictable nature and the roller coaster that life is means
Sure.
you never know.
Absolutely. It's like you said, you had so many different surgeries. In my mind, I'm like, relax. It's not a competition. Like, like
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
not giving out medals. So, well, thank you for sharing that. Just certain listeners weren't aware. I think last time we did speak, it was right after Europeans, and then just all of this happened, unfortunately. But I'm happy that you're back out there. I'm happy that
Yeah.
you're you know marching back to get back on the mats and competing again. So I'm excited for that and can't wait to see you out there and winning and just kicking
Thank
ass.
you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. um, I have some questions here, just
Okay.
random, um, different questions that I'm going to ask. Not a bunch of them. As I'm looking at, it, I was like, "Ooh, what's going to be the most fun?" Let's play with these questions here. Ooh, I like this one. I like this one. I think I'm gonna do four of them.
Okay.
All right. What's a phrase or word that you overuse?
Basically.
Hmm, okay. Huh? Really?
You'll notice it from now on. You'll notice
Yeah.
it in my voice
Yeah.
messages.
Now I am like, jeez, I shouldn't even ask that because now I'm just gonna zero in on that every time. They're like, okay, okay, gotcha,
I would,
gotcha.
yeah, definitely, basically, yeah.
And even as I was reading the question, I was trying to think like, what's something I've heard her say multiple times or just a whole lot. I was like, and I never even made note of basically being it. Hmm.
You'll notice it now.
Oh yeah. Now I'm gonna go back and listen through all the messages, play all the podcasts back and everything. I was like, oh my gosh, she does. I had a teacher who would say a lot. I think one of the students, this was in high school, freshman year, one of the students sat there and counted how many times he said in a class. I think he said over 150 times.
Oh
It's
wow.
like, geez, Louise, dude. Like, I don't know how many times I say during a podcast because I edited them all out. But you know, like I probably, well, I've gotten a lot better about it. So because I'm aware with the podcast, so what I do is I slow myself down
Yeah.
because if I'm talking too fast, there are a lot of and and like and okay guys. So yeah, that's what the teacher said a lot as well. Okay guys. So he was kind of a dick anyway. Uh, what's the talent that you would most like to have?
Good question. The ability to choreograph hip hop.
Okay. You know, that's good answer. Good answer. There are times I'm listening to music and I'm just sitting here and I'm like, you know, like I play out these like pretend scenarios in my mind of like these dance
Yeah,
scenarios.
so do I. Yeah.
And I'm just like, like, oh man, that's kind of weird, but it's so fun. Like I'll just
Yeah.
it's just any song. I'm just sitting there, like any up tempo song, and it's like, oh wow, like I wonder if I missed my calling. Maybe I should have went into. There was a dance studio next to where my old gym was, and I
Oh
considered
really?
going there and doing. It was ballroom dancing though, but I considered signing up for that along with jiu-jitsu. Jessica, I was trying to collect hobbies. I think it's just sometimes I need stuff to do. It's like
Yeah.
I need other things to do. I can't because it was like I don't want to be sitting around all the time. So it was like maybe if I do jujitsu and then I can leave jujitsu and go walk down a couple doors and then do ballroom dancing. Because my uncle he teaches ballroom dancing. So I think that would have been kind of another cool way to connect with him. But yeah, I think yeah, choreographing hip hop, that's a good answer. Now it's got me thinking. It's probably after we're done recording, I'm just gonna sit here in the basement with the music going. Um,
Yeah, if it obviously, the question about what would you like to be talented at, I would love to be more talented at more jiu-jitsu, but I have confidence that will come with time. So I think if I had
Absolutely.
never gone near jiu-jitsu, I definitely think dance, particularly hip hop, R&B, would have been where I ended up, in addition to weightlifting. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. With jiu-jitsu, since you're already in that arena, you'll get there. So, I mean, you're already, you're moving in that direction anyway. So it's only a matter of time before, you know, you're, a black belt. So you'll be there. Um,
One day, one day. It feels like a very, very long way off, but I hear a lot of black belts say, it creeps up very quickly.
yeah, I'm sure. It's, I mean, just when you're not expecting, just belt promotions. Period.
Mm.
It's like great.
I was the same when I got my blue belt. I had no idea at all it was coming. I really, really didn't. I spent about 5 years at white belt because I got to surgery number 7, and that had a big impact on my ability to train and compete. So um, we're at this open mat, and Gareth tells me that a couple of people are getting stripes, so we all line up. There are a lot of non-native English speakers there, so I'm listening, waiting to translate, and then it hits me that I'm getting promoted. So I legit burst into tears. I'm so shocked because it really does mean so much to me, and oh my goodness, I cried and cried, and I was in shock for about 4 days. And when I get promoted to purple, I will cry, and I am an ugly crier, but totally unapologetic about it because jiu-jitsu takes so much dedication and passion that I'll cry if I want to, and I'm not sorry.
Oh, I mean, you earned it. You deserve it. You can do what you want. It was like why is she crying? I earned this, damn it. I can cry. Um, so, but that was the video you shared the other day.
Yeah, I shared my blue belt promotion the other day because it's one of the happiest and most, well, of my journey so far in jiu-jitsu. It's one of the most special days. But I ended up taking it down from Instagram because I was getting a lot of congratulations on receiving my
Mm.
purple belt, and I was like, no, it doesn't say that. It was the video was a minute long, so I shared it on my stories, and my instructor quite clearly says that it's my blue belt I'm getting. But on the last clip of the video, I say, and I already know I will cry at purple, but because there's a lot of non-native English speakers on my Instagram, I took it down because I was getting these congratulatory messages. And although you can actually see it's a blue belt, I didn't want to be accused of whatever the opposite of sandbagging is. So, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. And I saw the video come through the stories, and it was really cool. I was like, dude, that's really cool. Like, I understood that it was because I didn't hear anything to it, but I saw what it was and kind of pieced together. I was like, oh, I think I commented. I was like, dude, this is really cool to see.
It
So,
was April the 1st, and my
mm,
instructor is known as being quite a big joker. But if he had turned around and said April Fools, that he wouldn't have done that. But then I thought about it afterwards. I was like, goodness, if he had, what would I have done? But he's not that cruel, thankfully.
I, I don't know that. Yeah, see,
That's too much. That's cruel. That's too much. He wouldn't do that.
in the back of my mind, I'm like, yes, that's horrible. But I'm also thinking, dude, I know some people I would do that to. Like there's at least three people, if I had that opportunity, you're like, dude, today's the day. And then it's not. Then I promote them the next day though, if I had that power. Um, what is something that you like that most people don't?
I would say writing academic papers. I love academic writing. I love research. It's a huge passion of mine, and not something I talk about a huge amount, to be honest. I really love researching. I really love, doing literature reviews, that kind of thing. And a lot of people don't, they see it as a task that's necessary but boring. And I don't find it boring. I really love writing, and what helped me in academia to write well was the amount of reading I did.
It's like I know you like the research. I guess that I was shocked that was your answer though. Like I'm sitting, I was like, really? Okay.
I do proofread a lot of academic papers, and I really enjoy that because it's such a wide range of disciplines, whether it's physiology or education or business, and everything in between, STEM and science, technology, engineering, maths. I find it all really interesting. I did proofread a dissertation on a thesis on concrete. I have to admit that was a little bit less interesting, but still, you learn new things.
All right. So I have three cards here in my hand.
Okay.
This is one. Oh,
Hmm.
wait. This is one, two, and three. Pick one.
It's got to be the middle one because the middle one represents first place on the podium in jiu-jitsu.
I like the way you think. All right. If you're given $100,000, you have to donate it or create a charity. What charity or where you donated?
I would donate to Mind, the mental health charity in the UK. It's a very good charity, does some very important work. And as you know, mental health is a topic very close to my heart. And there is such an issue in the UK with lack of resources and funding for mental health services in our public system that a lot of people do reach out to charities like Mind for psychological support, but there's only so much they can do, as a lot of the people who work for them are volunteers, which is often the case. So I would definitely donate $100,000 to them.
I agree. I think there needs to be more just care in that realm. There's such unfortunate stigmas, and just people handle matters differently, and then others look down upon it, and we need to get away from that. We need to
Yeah.
all care more and be kinder to each other. So thank you for that. So Teanna, thank you as always for doing this with us here. I do appreciate you, you know, giving your time to be my guest. It's always fun. It's always, great conversing with you. So, you have any shout outs or mentions you'd like to add in there for us?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on. It's been good fun. I've enjoyed it as usual. Shout out to Chris at XS Guard Mouthguard. Shout out to Hyperfly Europe for their continued support, especially with my surgeries and not being able to compete recently. Huge shout out to Dr. Carl Bescoby, who is my sports injury psychologist. He can be found on Instagram with the handle The Injury Psychologist. And also shout out to Chris at Enhanced. He owns a company that has very, very high quality CBD products, and you can use my code Teanna BJJ10 to get 10% off everything on their website. And I will pass you over the link.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. I'll make sure to have all that information set up in the show notes so everybody can get a hold of that information. And as always, thank you, everyone. I do appreciate it. If you all have any questions, concerns, criticisms, reach out to me. You can find me at bjj.wiki or Off the Mats Podcast, both on Instagram. Hey, you know, I'm an open book, so you ain't gonna hurt my feelings if you say, dude, you need to change this or you need to change that. Just let me know. I probably won't do it, but still, let me know. Big shout out to my friend Mike over at Asgard 503. Go check him out on Instagram and go check out the website as well. Asgard503.com. He's got some great rash guards, gis, spats, you name it, he's got it. Go check him out. And not only that, I mean, this man, like, he's putting in the work over there. So he's completely hands on. So please go check out Mike over at Asgard 503 on Instagram and Asgard503.com. Go give him a looks. Also, big shout out to my good friends Shut Up Nut and Nevik over at the Razzle Dazzle podcast. They have been a guest a couple different times on the show, and I listen to their podcast about the TV show Lost. So if you guys are into that, go check it out. And even if you're not really into Lost and it's something you're still curious about, I definitely recommend listening to their show. Nevik does a great job with the research that he puts into, each episode and just all the details that they both discuss. It's a phenomenal show. So please go check them out. And then last shout out is to my other podcast, So You Like Horror. So You Like Horror podcast. It's about horror movies. And the most recent episode, we discuss soundtracks and scores. In the next upcoming episode, we're going to be talking about Stephen King. So if you're into that kind of thing, go check it out. I think you'll like it. I do. Otherwise, thank you, everyone. Love you to death. You guys keep listening. I'm going to keep making these shows. Thank you so much, everyone. Ciao.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.